So welcome back to this video. Now in this part of the cache calculator application, we're going to add the functionality for converting this cache into words. So I'm going to click on this particular refresh button, and also I'm going to check the application, because once we are going to start the code for the conversion of the numeric value to word, then we don't want to fix the errors inside this particular total cache related thing. So here if I enter here 2, then the value is updated 4000, which is correct. If I enter here 5, then the value is updated 2500, which is correct. If I enter here 5, then we get the 1000. If I enter here 5, we get the 500 as a result. But there is a one problem. If I enter here 5, then it's also going to display the value inside this particular 50, means this particular row, which is the 50 rupees note currency. So there is a problem, and the problem is here. You can see right now in front of your code, it is actually initialized with the 80, So we need to actually provide here 8050, which is 8050 for the 50 rupees currency of the India. Alright, now everything is actually matching perfectly. Now again I'm going to enter here 2, then 2, then you can see here 3, then 2. Now if I enter here 2, we get the perfect result. Now here 2, then 10 to the 20, then 10, then we get 2, 20, 40, then 2, then we get the 4, and then 2, which is 1 into 2 by then 2. So now the cache is perfectly calculated. So now it's time to add the functionality to this particular reset button, so that we can reset the data. And after that, we're going to set the code for the invalid inputs. Right now you can see if I enter here some invalid inputs like this minus value, so we want to avoid these values also. Alright, we want to restrict it with these input invalid values, so the user can't enter these particular invalid values. So first we are going to add these two features, and then after that we are going to add the features to convert the cache into words. Alright, so here we need to set the listener to the button. Alright, so we need to set the listener to the button, which is our btn reset. So here we need to add the add event listener, and instead of that we need to listen to the click listener of the button, and here we need to call the function which is clear data. So this function is not created yet, so we need to create this particular callback, which is the function. So here after that we need to here provide the function, then the clear data, and then we need to start its block of the code. Now inside of this particular clear data function, we need to actually check for traverse each and every of the input type, means we need to actually traverse each of the input type. We need to check each of the input type and set its value to the empty string. So to do that, it's very simple. We have to use here cache inputs dot for each, and then instead of that we need to start its block of the code, but we need to start the block inside the braces of the for each. Alright, inside the braces of the for each. So here we need to provide the input, and after that we need to provide the arrow and then start its block of the code. Inside of the cache input, which is the input dot value is equal to, and we need to set the empty string value. And similarly we need to copy this into one more time, and here we need to replace it with the cache text, and this is going to be like here text, not text content, and then we need to provide here text also. So now if I enter here values like 3, you can see here, and if I click on the reset, the values is actually going to be reset. Now here there is a problem. The text content for this span element is not updated. That is because it is actually a text content variable, means the span element. So here we need to use the text content, because the value will be the property of the input type, and the span element has a property text content. If I control save it, and if I enter here some values like here values, if I click on the reset, then you can see everything is actually set it to 0. Then for handling the invalid values like this negative values, we need to add here a check for this particular cache inputs. So here we need to add the cache inputs dot for each, because we need to set it for the every input element. Alright, then here we need to provide the input, and then the arrow function bracket, means the arrow operator, and then to start the block of the code. Instead of that, we need to provide the input, then we need to set it the listener. So we want to check for the input values and specify the comma. Then I will be here specifying the arrow function, And instead of that, we need to provide the condition. So first we need to check the create a variable which is const value is equal to, then we need to use the %int function. So it is like %, and instead of the %, we need to provide the input dot value, because whatever we are actually traversing, the values, we need to check for the values, input dot value, and then we have total 10, and after that we need to apply here a condition. So if is nan, and instead of that we need to provide the value. Also, if there is a value which is smaller than 0, so we need to also check for the condition also, like smaller than 0. Then what we want to actually do, we want to set the input type to empty string. So like input type, which is the value, then we need to set it to the empty string. Control save it. If I try to enter here negative values, then you can see once I enter here negative value, so I am actually not able to enter here a negative values. Alright, so we actually handle the invalid inputs as well. Now it's time to add the functionality for converting the text into words. So for that, we need to create here a function which is function keyword. Then we need to provide the name of the function which is convert to words, like this particular one, convert to words. Then the round bracket of the function. Then here inside of this convert to words, we need to provide the number. So the number is actually a value that we need to provide to this particular function. So after once we are setting the final cache, that is here, we need to call this function here. So we need to set the value to txt final cache in words. So it is a text value, means the text tag. So we need to update its text content. So here the total cache. So we are actually need to craft the entire message, means construct the entire message. Total cache in words. Right. So we need to here use the dollar symbol, right, dollar, and then starting the curly brackets. So here I need to use the template string, because the dollar concept will not going to be work here if we use the normal double quote. So we need to use the convert to word function, and instead of that we need to pass the value of the total cache variable. If I select here view word wrap, then everything will be presented in the same viewport of the Visual Studio Code. So what we have done here, we have actually called the convert to word function, and instead of that convert to word function, we have passed the total cache value, that is the value of this particular variable. We have passed the total cache value to this particular convert to word function. After that, we need to add the code inside this particular function, because it's going to accept a number as a parameter. But before that, we need to set here a lot of things. So I'm going to copy and paste the array values, because I have already created these values inside my notepad, because it is like a repeated task. So that is the reason I'm going to copy it here. But before copying, I need to actually create some references so that you can understand it. So first we need to create here the units array, like if we initialize the bracket here. Then we need to create here another array which is like tens, like this particular array. And then we need to create a third array which is like tens is equal to, and we need to set here a value. So now after providing the declaration of these arrays, we need to initialize the values inside of these arrays. So it is actually a little bit like a repeated task, because we have to enter here a lot of values. So I'm going to copy and paste these three values of the array, so that to save a little bit of the time, because it's a repeated task. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to open my notepad file and I'm going to paste the code here. So this will be the array initialization code for this particular arrays. Okay, so now I'm going to reduce the size of the window of the browser, and you can see, and also I'm going to zoom out a little bit so that you can see everything more clearly. Right, so this will be the code. Okay, so we have these three arrays right now. You can see the initialization of these three arrays. Okay, so we have these three arrays here. So this array is tens array, and this. Now the one more thing is, this value is for the 0 case, because it is going to handle the 0, and it is actually used for the unit values, which is for the 0 to 9. So whenever there is a value come inside of this particular input type, which is 0 to 9, So that array will be used, which is the units array. And similarly, if it is a case for the values like from 10 to 19, then the values word will be picked from this particular array, which is the tens array. And similarly, if it is a case for the tens array, which is like 30, 20, 40, then it will be handled, means from 20 to 90 will be handled by this particular array, right? Means it is going to handle by this particular array. So I hope you get the idea, because in English language we have 26 alphabets, and to get these alphabets in a working, we can't use a direct approach. So we need to actually convert the value that is provided with this particular total cache value. We need to convert it into the words. So to do that, we need to actually create a mechanism here. Now the one more important thing that I want to explain is this particular two values. Now these will be required because the first value of the index 0, which actually denotes the value of this single units, which is already covered by this particular units array. So whenever there is a value required to replace this 0 to 9, suppose if there is a 206, so now it's actually a 6 is come here. So it is like 206. The English notation of this particular will be like this, means it will be converted to 206. So that 6 will be picked from here. So the 100 will be added by using the conditions, because the crore, the lakhs and the 100 and the 1000 will be added by using the conditions. But this will be the prefix words that will be used to convert the values of the numeric into words. I hope you get some of the idea, because this logic is tricky. I already explained, because I need to explain a lot of things. So these are the three things that I have explained to you. This first one is actually denotes the single units value. The second one is actually denotes the tens value, which will handle the values from 10 to 19. And this is going to itself handle the values from 20 to 90. Now for handling the values like 200, 1000 and lakh and crore, so we need to add all of these four strings by using the conditions. Okay, so that we are going to do next. We need to add here a condition. So if number, because this particular function is going to accept a number as a parameter, that is this one. So if it is equals to 0, then we need to add here return 0. Okay, so this will be used to actually return a 0 in the initial stage of when this particular function is called. So that's particular if condition is used for this particular purpose. And after that, we need to create here another variable, which is let words is equal to, and then here we need to provide it with the empty string value. Now after that, we need to add here some conditions for these particular arrays. So for that, here we need to first check if the current number, like this particular number, we need to use this particular number and check for the condition if the number is actually greater than 0. If it is greater than 0, then we want to perform the if block. Otherwise, we don't want to perform anything if the number is not greater than 0. Okay, so this condition will be executed. So here inside of this particular if block, we need to check whether the number is actually smaller than 10. So if the number is smaller than 10, then we need to actually use this array to update this particular words variable value. Alright, so here we are going to use the short syntax property to actually initialize and also add the variable value. So it is going plus words, and here inside of that we need to use the units array. So units array, and the number that we are getting here, we need to pass it directly as an index value to the array. So suppose we enter here, like inside of this particular application, if I enter here 5, you can see the total cache is 5. Right now it's actually showing undefined because this function is return nothing, because we are not returning anything from this particular function. So if I can do it here like return and return words, that is this one dot trim. So I'm going to remove the spaces, means the white spaces before and after the string error purpose, just for removing the error. Okay, if I just control save it and if I enter here like 5, you can see right now we are getting the value 5. That is because the current number is actually 5 and that is passed to this particular function, which is the convert to word function, because inside of when we are calling this particular function, so here we are actually calling the function. Instead of this convert to word function, we are passing the value total cache value. This value is actually the value of this particular total cache. So 5 will be passed to this function and it will come back to here inside of this comparison. Like 5 is not equal to 0. So this block will not be executed. Then the 5 is greater than 0. So now its condition is true. Then it's come to this particular if block. Then here 5 will be compared. 5 is smaller than 10, which is true. Then it's going to initialize the words variable with that particular units number value. So here it is looks like units, and means the array inside of that it is actually a 5 index. So it come back to the units array, like the first one is for 0, second is 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Then that particular word will be picked and it will be initialized to this particular variable, which is the words variable, because we have initialized it with the empty string, but now it has a value 5. Means this particular word variable, which is a string representation of the 5, and that will be written by this particular function with this particular block of the code, means this particular line of the code. And we are using the trim function so that we can remove the white spaces before and after the word, which is the string. Alright, so this is the working for the conditions, that is the digits from 0 to 9. Now similarly we need to check for the condition for the tens and also for the tens. So after that, here we just need to remove these lines, means remove the extra spacing. Then we need to add here the else if condition. So else if, instead of that we need to check whether the number is actually smaller than 20, because we need to handle the condition from 10 to 19. Remember, in the array I have explained that this will be the array used to take care of the values from 10 to 19. That is the comment I have added. Okay, so that is what we want to do here. And come back to the if condition. Then to start the else if block, instead of that we need to first do what? We need to use here some calculations, because we cannot directly set the number to the index of the array, because it is actually a 2's value. So we also need to take care of the values, like if I enter here like 22, then you can see it's become 49. Now at this point of time it is going to do nothing, because this particular if block is empty, so there is no such conditions available and the words variable is not updated. So this is actually a 49. Right, and if I just simply remove it here, like if I enter here only like 5, so it is actually a 15. But right now the value 15 is not picked up, because we have not specified any condition here. So first I'm going to write the code, then I will be explaining you how this is actually working. Then here we need to add the words, which is the variable. Then we need to add here the addition and then the initialization, which is to add the values and initialize it to the words variable. And then here we need to use the tens array, because the values are actually taken care by this particular array. Instead of that, first we need to minus the number minus 10. Now why we are actually minusing with the 10? So that we get the index value and we can easily use that index inside of this particular array, because the indexing of these particular arrays is actually started from 0. So right now you can see here the value is actually 15. So if I use here, the current number is actually 15. So if we use here 15 minus 10, then the value is actually equals to like 5. So the tens array has a value which is like 5. So if I just do it here like this way, means the tens array has a value 5. The index is passed here 5, which actually denotes this particular values, because this is actually stored at the index of 0, means the 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So we will get the 15 value inside this particular words variable. So if I control save it, and if I try to do the same by using here just 5, which is for 10, and here also 5, then you can see now the value 15 is printed to the text in words division element, which is the output element. Okay, you can see now the value 15 is printed. The reason for that I already explained you, because the number is current is 15, which is minus 10, so that we can get the indexes. So that is what we are done with the use of the tens array. Now it's time to use the tens array to update the values which is actually greater than 19. Suppose if I enter here like 2, right now it is 25, so the value is actually greater than 19. Remember, the arrays here, this particular array will take care of the values which is from 10 to 19, And now the rest of the values from 20 to 90 will be taken care by this particular array, which is the teens array. So we need to use this particular array. So that will be used inside the else block. So here we need to use the else block. So it is like else block. Inside of that, we need to add the logic. So here we need to use the words. Then again the short syntaxing property. And then we need to use the tens array. Inside of the tens array, we need to perform some calculation. So first we need to use the math dot, like this particular math dot lower function, and instead of that we need to divide the current number with the 10. Now why we are actually dividing the number? So that we can remove the tens place from the number, because we need to split this number into two different values, like 20, which is 20, and then we need to take care of this particular 5 value separately. What I mean here, the number is actually 25, but we need to take care of this number, means the number is split into like this way, which is 20, and then we need to take care of the 5 as well, like this 5. So that will become like 25. So in order to get it, because if we use it like 25, so we need to split this number. So that is the reason we need to divide here number with the value 10. Okay. So once we divide the number, then we need to actually see the result. Once we divide the number, then that will be added to the way. So if there is a current number is like 25, so 25 divided by the 10. So once we divide the current number, which is like 25 divided by 10, so it is like 10 to the 20. So we will get the 2 value, that 2 is the index, like this is the 0th index, this is the 1 index, and this is actually a 2 index. So it is like 20. So 20 will be initialized to this particular variable, and that then 5 will be taken care by these particular conditions. Alright. So if I control save it here, and if I try to do it, just like here, if I enter here value, like here if I enter 5, which is 10, and then I enter here 5, yeah, you can see here 30, but there is no 5 is actually done here. For that, we need to check the another condition inside this particular else block, because right now this number is actually ignoring the condition, because 35 is greater than 0, 35 is smaller than 10, false, 35 is smaller than 20, false, then it's actually come back to this particular condition. But we get the 35, but we need to take care of this particular 5 value. Similarly, if we take the example of the 25, if I reset here if I enter 5, if I enter here 10, then you can see we get the 25. But the problem is that we are not able to see the result 5. So we need to add the conditions inside this else block, because once we are inside the else block, there is no way to actually get back to these particular conditions. Alright. So in order to do that, according to this particular project logic, we need to add here conditions. So we need to check for the current number. So if the number is modulus operator, we need to use there a modulus operator. If it is divisible by 10 and greater than 0, then we want to perform the condition. So if it is divisible by 10 and if it is greater than 0, then we want to perform the condition, which is in this case, it is not fully divisible by 10, because it's going to leave a remainder 5. So 5 is greater than 0, then that particular if block will be executed. Then we need to update the value, and remember we need to actually get here a space. So for that we need to add the empty string as well inside this particular words variable. So again we are going to use the short syntaxing property to actually add the values and also initialize it. So plus, then we need to here first initialize with the empty string, which is this one. Then we need to add the concatenation, because plus is used for the concatenation. So the 20 values already taken care by this particular line of the code, but this 5 we need to take care by using the units array, because remember the units will be taken care of all the values from 0 to 9. So here we need to use the units array, and instead of that we need to pass the value. So again we need to calculate this logic, because the current number is actually 25. So if we directly pass the number, then we will get the undefined value. So we need to use this particular logic here also, which is number divisible by 10. So it's going to return us a value which is 5. Alright, then we get the value 5 that will be initialized to this particular words variable. So here we are getting the values like units 5. So on the 5th index we have a value like this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we get the 5. Now if I control save it, and if I do the same here like 10, and if I enter here a value 5, then you can see here finally we get the value which is 25. So I hope these if conditions are actually clear to you, because these are necessary for handling the values from 0 to 9, 10 to 19, and from 20 to 90. But what if the values are actually far more greater than these. Like if I enter here like 5, you can see right now this is 50. If I enter here like 5, you can see it is now 100, and that will become undefined. So for handling the 100 case, we need to use the conditions, and we need to also use the concept of the recursion, because we are going to call this function in again to solve the approach. Like we are actually removing here the tens place because we are splitting the number into two different digits. Similarly, for the 100, we need to split the digits into multiple ways, means split the digits into three different ways. So suppose if I enter here 1, so we need to take care of the 100, and then we need to separately take care of this 40. Now the logic for the 40 we have already written by this particular if condition, and I have already explained to you as well. Now I'm going to write the logic for the 100th one so that we can remove the 100 place and then define the values inside this particular final text to cache in words variable. Okay, means the numeric to words variable conversion. So for that we need to add the if conditions. So here after that we need to here use the if condition. Instead of that we need to use the math because we are actually performing the calculation. So we want to perform the division. So currently we want to divide the number by the 100. So if the number division is actually greater than 0, then we want to perform the condition. So right now this 140 is actually greater than 0, because if we divide the 140 with the 100, what we will get? So if I open my calculator, because I want to show you, like if I just simply divide here 140 divided by 100, so we will get 1.4. And this is why we have, and that's why we have used here a floor function. So we will get a value which is 1. So 1 is actually greater than 0. So it means we are getting the 1. So that means it is actually a 100. But we need to construct a logic so that we can append a 100 string to that particular 1 value, so that we actually formed our word representation of the string, which is the 100. So for that we need to here again update the words variable, which is the value. This is the variable that we are actually updating. Again, we are going to use the short syntaxing property to actually initialize the value and also add it to the variable. So words, then we need to call here a recursion approach. So we need to again call the convert to word function. Instead of that, again we need to pass the math.floor because we are again going to perform the calculation. So math.floor, and instead of that, again we need to update the value, which is the number divided by particular 100 value. Alright, and then we need to append it by using the 100 and then the string that we want to use here. So this is a string, and there is, and also you should add here some space. Okay, so once we done that, then that particular one value that we are getting with this particular convert to word function, we are getting the value 1 like this. Okay, and then we are actually appending it like 100. Okay, so this will be the one value will be 100. Then we need to format the number, means this particular string will be added to this. Now we need to initialize that particular number as well. So here we need to use the number, and then we need to use the percent, which is a modulus operator, and then if it is equal to 100. Okay, so we are actually formatting the number. So if I actually here control save it and try to run the project again for the 100 value, so if I enter here a 1, then you can see we are getting the value 100. Now if I enter here like 5, so this 110. Now this 100 is actually dealt by this particular if condition, and then this 10 value will be dealt by this particular condition, which is like this 10 is smaller than 20. So this particular condition will be executed. Similarly, for writing the other logics, like if I copy and paste it here for the 1000 one, we just need to here increase a 0, and also here increase a 0, and also here we need to increase a 0. Then the rest of the logic will become very easy. I'm going to remove this comment here. Then here we need to add the 1000. If I save it here, and now if I enter a value inside the 1000, like here if I enter 2, then you can see we are getting the value 1000. And if I enter here like 2, then we are getting the value 1400, which is actually correct. Similarly, for adding the values for the lakhs, like if I just simply here copy and paste it, then we need to just simply here increase the zeros to 5, and here we need to also add 2 zeros, and here we also need to add 2 zeros, and this one is for the lakhs. Lakh can simply as here lakhs. If I enter here lakhs value, so suppose if I enter here 25, this is 25,000, means the 50,000, not 25,000, 50,000. So if I enter here 60 nodes, then you can see 1,20,000. We are able to print the value correctly. And similarly, if we want to add a value which is in crores, So simply you need to add here 7 zeros. So just increase the 2 zeros, and also here you need to increase the 2 zeros, and also here increase the 2 zeros. Right now there is a 4, 3. So if I control save it, and here we need to use the crores. And if I control save it, now if I enter here a value like 500, you can see 10 lakh, and if I enter, you can see now we are getting the crore values. So 1 crore 25,000, which is the true value. So you can see our application is working fine. Now the only problem that we are facing in this particular application is that when I click on the reset, these values are actually not getting reset. Now to solve that particular issue, whenever we click on the reset button, if I control save it, and if I again here run the application, and if I enter some values, if I click on the reset, then you can see the values of the input type and the span element is reset, but we are not getting to actually this value will be reset, which is the total cache and the total cache in words. Now in order to fix that, first we need to set the values to these span elements as 0. Right now you can see it's actually set it to empty string. So coming back to the clear data function, where we are actually calling the clear data. So here we are actually setting the listener to the button, and then we are calling the clear data function. So inside of that, first we need to set the 0. If I control save it here, and if I enter some values like here, and if I click on reset, now you can see the values are actually set to 0, but still the total cache is actually not reset. So after setting the reset, means after changing the inputs type values and also the span elements, we need to here call the function which is total cache. So again we need to call this particular function. If I control save it right now, and if I now enter values here, if I click on reset, then you can see now we are finally able to reset the cache to 0. So that's it for this particular module. If you like this module, then please leave a review, because your review definitely going to help me to reach more students, and also it motivates me to create more awesome courses like this. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next lecture. Thank you very much.